you think of serial killers, the first pictures that may have come to mind may have been of the scary, well-known killers who are all over the news and in popular culture. Kids are supposed to be clean, innocent, and fun. On the other hand, nature tends to make odd things happen where there are rules. That's why we're going to look at some young murderers today. These are the killers who made us question what we thought we knew about psychopathy. Let's get into it. Number 1. John Henry Miguel Robinson. Harvey Miguel Robinson is an American serial killer who was born on December 6, 1974, and is currently on death row in Pennsylvania. That makes him one of the youngest serial killers in American history. He was only 18 years old when he was caught. For the first time in Allentown, Pennsylvania's history, he has killed more than one person. Because Robinson's father was an alcoholic, he abused Robinson's mother physically and mentally, and then left the family. Later, his father went to prison for killing his lover by beating her. Robinson was arrested for burglary and sent to jail for 8 months between the killings of Burghardt and Schmoyer. After Schmoyer was killed, Robinson was almost caught when he was pulled over for speeding, but he just paid his ticket and drove off. 2 of Robinson's victims lived, and Denise Sam Calley was one of them. Robinson followed a 5-year-old girl around for days before breaking into her home, raping and strangling her, and then leaving her for dead. Sam Calley was able to get away from Robinson and run outside. Robinson tried to hit her again, but she got away. In the end, Robinson was caught using Sam Calley as bait to get him to come in. Robinson and a police cop got into a shootout. Robinson ran away, but he got hurt. He was caught when he got to the hospital. Robinson got the death sentence for what he did. Robinson's death sentence had been put on hold as of April 2006. He was later given a new sentence of life in jail for killing Joan Burghardt because he was only 17 years old at the time of the crime. Robinson would have to face another panel in 2010 to decide what could happen to Charlotte Schmoyer. Robinson gave up his right to appeal the Schmoyer case on December 14, 2012, in return for a life sentence. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court confirmed Robinson's death sentence in the murder of Fortney in December 2013. That part of Robinson's crime spree story was also told on the investigation discovery show Your Worst Nightmare. He was also in several investigation discovery shows, including Killer Kids, Most Evil, and Dead of Night. Number 2. Edmund Kemper. Kemper first showed signs of wanting to kill when he was only 15 years old. Because he was so psychotic, he is known as one of the most notorious American serial killers. It was his first murder. He shot both of his grandparents in North Fork, California, where he was living with them. "I just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma," was his answer to the police when they asked him about the murder. American serial killer Edmund Emil Kemper was born on December 18, 1948. He killed 10 people just between May 1972 and April 1973. Kemper had killed his paternal grandparents when he was 15 years old. Kemper was known as the co-ed killer because most of the people he killed were female college students traveling in the Santa Cruz County, California area. He killed most of his victims by necrophilia, cutting off their heads or dismembering them. He would pick up female students hitchhiking and take them to dangerous places where he would shoot, stab, suffocate, or choke them. Then he would take their bodies back to his house, cut off their heads, do irrimatio on their severed heads, sleep with their bodies, and then cut them up into pieces. Kemper put the bodies of both women in the trunk of his Ford Galaxy and went back to his apartment. A police officer stopped him on the way because his taillight was broken, but the officer didn't notice the bodies in the car. Kemper took the bodies to his flat because his neighbor wasn't there. There, he took pictures of and slept with the naked bodies before cutting them up. After putting the body parts in plastic bags, he left them near Loma Prieta Mountain. Kemper rumbled with Pesci and Lucchesa before throwing their cut heads into a ravine. The head of Pesci was found on Loma Prieta Mountain in August of that year. The rest of Pesci's body or any sign of Lucchesa could not be found after a heavy search. Ketchum killed his mother, her best friend, 5 college students, 1 high school student, and himself over 11 months. Kemper has said in interviews that he often looked for victims after a fight with his mother because she wouldn't put him in touch with women at the university where she worked. Psychologists and Kemper himself have said that they think the young women were stand-ins for his real goal, which was his mother. He thought that someone was actively looking for him and had 3 guns and hundreds of rounds of ammo in his car. He found a phone box and called the police because he hadn't heard anything on the radio about the killings of his mother and Hallett when he got to Pueblo. He told the cops that he killed his mother and Hallett, but they didn't believe him and told him to call them back later. After a few hours, Kemper called again and asked to talk to a cop he knew. He told that officer that he killed his mother and Hallett. He then waited for the cops to come and arrest him. Kemper also admitted to killing the 6 kids when he was caught. Later, Kemper was asked why he turned himself in. He said the original purpose was gone. In a real or mental sense, he said it wasn't helping with anything, that it was a complete waste of time, and he was emotionally worn out and couldn't take it any longer. As the end got closer, he said he began to realize how pointless the whole thing was, and when he was almost too tired to stand, he just gave up and called it off. Number 3. Joshua Phillips. Joshua Phillips was born on March 17, 1984, in Allentown, Pennsylvania. His parents were Steve Phillips and Melissa Phillips. Steve was an alcoholic and drug user who beat up Phillips and Melissa. Both of them said they lived in fear of him. Steve had strict rules for his son, got mad when other kids were in the house when he wasn't there, and didn't like young girls. Melissa said she never knew why her husband didn't like girls. Maddie Clifton, who lived across the street from Phillips, asked him to come outside and play baseball on November 3, 1998, when Phillips was alone. Phillips agreed, even though his parents told him he couldn't have people over when they weren't there. Phillips hit the ball into Clifton's eye by mistake while they were playing baseball, making her bleed, cry, and scream. Phillips freaked out because he knew his dad was coming home soon and was afraid of how he would react. Phillips pulled Clifton into his house and said that Clifton's clothes fell off as he did it. He hit her with the bat to stop her from crying, and then he put her under his bed. Phillips took out the mattress, cut Clifton's throat, and killed her by stabbing her 7 times in the chest with a knife from a Leatherman tool. She was still alive and screaming under his bed. People said that Clifton had gone missing around 5 p.m. that same day for 6 days. Police and citizens looked for Clifton. Phillips took part in the search. He said later that he lived in denial for a week after the event. Melissa Phillips found a wet spot on the floor in her son's room on November 10. She looked through the room and found Clifton's body. She left the house immediately to call the cops to report what happened. Phillips was caught at his school later that same day and admitted to killing the person within hours. The prosecutors questioned some parts of Phillips' story. State Attorney Harry Shorstein said that Phillips had talked about sexual things with both Maddie Clifton and her older sister, which made him think that the murder may have been sexually driven. Investigators said that the lack of dirt and sand on Clifton's body did not back Phillips' claim that she took off her clothes as he dragged her into his room, even though the autopsy did not find any signs of sexual assault. Prosecutors also said that there was no blood in the garden or on the baseball that Phillips said he hit Clifton with, which they said was not consistent with his story. Number 4. Jesse Pomeroy. The child of Thomas J. Pomeroy and Ruth Ann Snowman was born in Charlestown, Massachusetts. His name is Jesse Harding Pomeroy. He was the second of two kids. Tracy Hayden, a 7-year-old girl from Chelsea, was beaten and left on Powderhorn Hill on February 21, 1872. Robert Mayer, an 8-year-old boy, was also beaten and left in an empty outhouse in Chelsea on May 20. Johnny Balch was found tied up and beaten in an empty outhouse on Powderhorn Hill on July 22. The Boston Globe said, soon after the third attack, that the public is considerably scared about what they called a fiendish boy who is attacking younger children violently. Along with her children, Ruth Ann Pomeroy moved from Chelsea to South Boston around August 2, 1872. They lived on Broadway Street. Thomas Pomeroy had left his family by this point. On August 17, 1872, a fourth attack on a young child took place. In South Boston, 7-year-old George Pratt was found being beaten by fishers. Not long after that, on September 11, another 7-year-old boy, Joseph Kennedy, was beaten up. He is said to have been tricked into going to an empty dock near the salt marshes in South Boston, where he was beaten and cut with a pocket knife. 6 days later, on September 17, railroad workers walking along the Hartford and Erie line in South Boston found 5-year-old Robert Gould tied to a telegraph pole near the tracks and having his throat cut with a knife. Pomeroy walked by South Boston's Police Station 6 a while after the last attack and chose to look in the window. The child who had been abused on September 11 was inside. His name was Joseph Kennedy. He saw Pomeroy looking through the window and told the police that that was who had attacked him. Pomeroy was caught right away and admitted right away that he was the boy torturer. In the end, all of the other kids who had been abused during the year recognized Pomeroy as the person who hurt them. In front of juvenile court, Judge William G. Forsyth on September 21, 1872, Jesse Pomeroy was charged and heard. Pomeroy, who was 13 at the time, admitted to and was found guilty of the attacks. He was then committed to 6 years at the State Reform School for Boys in Westborough, Massachusetts. Number 5. Robert Thompson, John Venables. These two people, Thompson and Venables, were charged with kidnapping and murder on February 20, 1993. They were found guilty on November 24, making them the youngest people to be found guilty of murder in modern British history. They were ordered to be locked up indefinitely at Her Majesty's pleasure and stayed there until June 2001, when the parole board said they should be freed on a lifelong license at age 18. In 2010, Venables went to jail for breaking the terms of his license. He was re-released on parole in 2013, but in November 2017, he was sent back to prison for having pictures of child sexual abuse on his computer. In 2023, he is still in jail because his requests for parole were turned down. Many people are arguing about what to do with young offenders when they get their sentences or are freed from jail because of the Bulger case. Number 6. Willie James Bosquet. Bosquet was born in New York City. Willie Sr. Butch, his father, killed 2 people in a Milwaukee pawn shop not long after he got pregnant with his son. He was given a life term and went to prison to study computer science and psychology. Butch got out of jail and got a job as a computer programmer for an aerospace business, but he was charged with a crime. He killed his girlfriend and then himself so that no one would find him out. Bosquet had a rough life. Willie's grandfather raped him many times after getting out of jail. His grandfather made him do anal sex when he was 9 years old to teach him about girls. Laura, his mother, had several live-in boyfriends who beat her. When Bosquet was a boy, he often stepped in to protect her, hitting a man with a pipe and slicing him with a knife in one case and threatening him. He also hurt his head when he ran out into the street and was hit by a car. All of this happened before he turned 10. When he was 9, his mother took the advice and asked him to be put in a center, saying he was a person in need of supervision. He was sent to the Children's Center in Manhattan, but he got away and ended up at Spofford, a secure detention center and the same kind of place for kids as Attica State Prison for adults. In and out of jails and prisons, he went, except for a short time when he turned 21 and finished his time for murder. His mom had told him, "Don't be picked on. Get back at them. Being tough is the only way to get respect." In the different centers, he got a notoriety for being violent, which he was proud of. He told the police that he was a child and that one day he would kill people like his father. Number 7. Mary Florabel. Mary was an unwanted child who was not cared for. As a baby, toddler, and young child, Mary often got hurt in accidents while she was home alone with her mother. This made her family think that her mother was either intentionally careless or trying to hurt or kill her daughter. Sometime around 1960, Betty dropped her daughter from a first-floor window, and another time, she gave her sleeping pills. She is also said to have sold Mary to a mentally ill woman who couldn't have children of her own. Catherine, her older sister, had to drive across Newcastle alone to get Mary back from this person and take the child to her mother's house on White House Road. Betty turned down multiple family offers to take custody of Mary, even though she had neglected and abused her child. By the mid-1960s, she is said to have started letting and pushing several of her clients to sexually abuse Mary in sadomasochistic sessions as a dominatrix. At home and school, Mary showed many signs of being unstable and acting out of character, such as having sudden mood swings and wetting the bed all the time. She is known to have fought a lot with other kids, both boys and girls, and to have tried to strangle or suffocate her friends or playmates more than once. She is known to have tried to block a young girl's trachea with sand at least once. Many kids didn't want to hang out with Mary because she was so violent. She would often spend her free time with Norma Joyce Bell, 1955 to 1989, the 13-year-old daughter of a friend. The girls had the same last name, but they were not connected. One classmate at Delavan Road Junior School said that by 1968, she and her peers were used to Mary's sudden and noticeable changes in behavior. When she started acting up, like shaking her head and making a steely gaze, her peers knew she was going to get violent, with the person she was staring at being the one she would attack. Number 8. Amit Sada. Sada is one of the youngest serial killers in the world. He is said to have killed 3 kids younger than 1 year. He killed those people in India in 2007. One of the 3 kids was his sister. In India, Amarjeet lived in the village of Mushaha. He was born into an impoverished family, and his father made him work from a very young age. His family found out about the first murder, but didn't tell anyone else until it was clear that Amarjeet wasn't done with killing people. Surprisingly, Amarjeet seemed to enjoy killing the babies. The police report says that Amit Sada, who was young, took babies into a nearby field and hit each one with a stone until they died. Amarjeet was found guilty and sent to a jail for teens. After 3 years, he was sent to a mental hospital. He wasn't freed until he turned 18. No one knows where Amit Sada is right now. Number 9. Carl Newton Mahan. Carl Newton Mahan killed his 8-year-old friend Cecil Van Hoos over a piece of scrap iron on May 18, 1929, in eastern Kentucky. He was 6 years old at the time. Since money was tight, the 2 boys went outside to find scrap metal to sell to a junk trader for cash. Cecil got angry over a piece of scrap iron and hit Carl in the face with it. Carl and Cecil ran all the way home. Carl took his dad's pistol and told Cecil he would shoot him, so he did. Carl was found guilty of killing Van Hoos. The original sentence was 15 years in reform school, but it was later changed, and the judge gave him a writ of prohibition that said he couldn't go to reform school. In that case, Carl was the youngest person charged with murder in Kentucky, and maybe even the whole country. Number 10. Lionel Tate. Lionel Tate was convicted of murder for brutally beating 6-year-old Tiffany Eunuch in 1999. Tate became the youngest person sentenced to life in prison without parole. On the night of the murder, Lionel's mother, Kathleen Grosset Tate, was babysitting the kids. She let 12-year-old Tate and 6-year-old Eunuch play downstairs while she went upstairs to nap in preparation for her overnight shift as a Florida state trooper. About 45 minutes later, Tate told his mother that the young girl wasn't breathing. Tiffany was pronounced dead at the hospital. Tate, who was nearly 6 feet tall and 166 pounds, admitted to wrestling with the 48-pound girl, holding her in a headlock and slamming her head into a table, but the autopsy showed more severe injuries inflicted by Tate, including a crushed skull, broken ribs, and a shredded liver that had been pushed through her rib cage. The Broward State Attorney's Office tried Lionel as an adult and punished him with a severe sentence to life in prison without parole. The conviction and sentencing shocked the nation and spurred discussion about the prosecution of children in America. That was intense, wasn't it? Which of these youngsters surprised you the most? We would like to hear your thoughts in the comments section. Like and subscribe to the channel to get notified when we release videos of similar content. Thanks for watching.